Imagine a world where SAP systems can be upgraded with almost no effort and very seamlessly. Imagine a world where you can benefit from the latest innovations for business processes with machine learning from SAP systems for your users, for your business, at any time you want, very flexibly and very agile. My name is Philipp Herzig, and I like to introduce you how to make this possible with the new extensibility strategy for 2021 coming from SAP now. But let's take a step back and look at the overall picture of the intelligent enterprise. SAP's vision is to realize end-to-end processes across all lines of businesses and all industries in the cloud and in hybrid deployment scenarios with the Intelligent Suite and the Industry Cloud, based on the most comprehensive business technology platform out there in the world. And all those solutions that are part of the intelligent enterprise, of course, need to be extended vertically and horizontally in all those solutions. And how we actually do this is the main motivation for this talk. And after telling you what the reason and the business motivation for this is, I'd like to introduce you to the new extensibility options with in-app and side-by-side technologies that you can use to cater for the individual and specific requirements of your business. And then I show you a couple of tools you can actually use to facilitate those extensions for your business. But let's look why we actually need extensibility. Is your company already on SAP S/4HANA 2020, released just 2 months ago? There are great innovations coming with SAP S/4HANA, like in manufacturing, a new capacity and demand planning simulation for predictive material resource planning to simulate shift capacity demands on top-level materials. Or in sales, a brand new customer overview analytical dashboard where you can look at sales volumes and margins or rejected sales order latest returns. Or for treasury executives, getting a seamless overview on cash positions, debt and investment positions, foreign exchange and credit risks. Just to name a few, and I really encourage you to go to my colleague Jan Gilk, who will introduce you to way more innovations, brand new innovations from SAP S/4HANA. But let me guess, if you're not on S/4HANA Cloud, most likely your company right now is still on an older release than SAP S/4HANA 2020. And it will take quite some years until your users and your business can benefit from those and way more innovations. For example, our statistics show us that after 3 years of its release, SAP S/4HANA 1709 remains the most often used S/4HANA release. And some of you may be even still on older releases like the SAP Business Suite, using some of the extensibility mechanisms that are shown here from a very well-known course called BC 400 in the past. So in other words, your users are missing out right now while we speak on those new innovations, and your businesses too. So what is hindering actually from upgrading sooner in a more agile fashion and more flexibly? The answer is simple. A key factor is the effort spent on the upgrades, as we all know. So when we look at an average SAP S/4HANA on-premise system, we see that up to 90%, on average it's 2/3, of the upgrade effort goes into adapting your custom code and the modifications, and the plethora of the effort actually then spent on regression testing, because after you have changed and upgraded those custom code and other extensions, you need to ensure that the business continues to function and is not disrupted due to those changes. An average SAP system has more than 13,000 custom code objects in it and more than 3,000 modifications. And the problem is those are not upgrade safe. They need special care and manual effort because those extensions are not built with the new extensibility capabilities. And we have therefore a challenge for you on our joint transformation towards the cloud and making systems and innovations to be more accessible and more often releasable to your end users. Get rid of modifications and custom code in 2021. And while we in this talk primarily focus on SAP S/4HANA, it also is the prima nota, those new extensibility options for all the other solutions, such as SuccessFactors or Concur, that are using very similar capabilities already today. And by the way, even if you're still on premise, you will benefit from those new capabilities. And if you plan maybe to go to the cloud only in a few years from now, you can still make your system now ready, benefit already immediately from it, and then make also your transition towards the cloud way more simpler for the future. So what is actually the business case of extensibility? When we look at how this is done today, of course, on the one hand side, we have the cost and the length of the upgrade projects that can be taken into account, and as well the agility and flexibility in view of dependencies, because they are your extensions are very strongly coupled to the code that SAP provides from a standard perspective. Now, regarding the upgrade, the modern tools make the upgrades actually very quick and safe, ideally not even requiring testing. There are non-intrusive extensions, meaning that they can save significant efforts during testing because we provide stable APIs that do not need to be tested for regressions, because we actually give you the guarantee that those APIs continue to function release over release. And by this, you actually can reduce finally the upgrade time and the maintenance efforts. And secondly, it's also possible to actually decouple the lifecycle. So the extensions can live on their own without being tightly coupled to the lifecycle of the SAP system. And this actually gives you then this flexibility that the SAP system can be upgraded independent actually from your extensions. And we further facilitate this with modern development tools, where we are striving for the highest degrees of development efficiency to make that life for you as simple as possible. And just let me be very, very clear. What you were doing in the past was not wrong at all. It was exactly the right way to do then. But with the advent of new technologies, with new, more demanding business requirements, with more agility, more flexibility required, now we also need to change our approach and tools towards extensibility. And this is not a fiction, what I'm telling you. This is the reality. And I would like to show you now in more detail what that means. So in the past, we had, for example, a core application like SAP S/4HANA as an application on top of the SAP NetWeaver. And specific requirements of your business could be addressed by modifications and custom code. But there was no clear boundary to the core code by SAP. You could access any function module, any internals of that system, which were unfortunately not upgrade safe, because SAP could change those function modules, for example, at any time. And then there were only a few decoupled side-by-side extensions. Also, it was already possible in the past, looking at BAPIs, for example, or OData APIs. But there were little, and there were really not much options to actually also create further side-by-side extensions. Now, what we actually want to do in the future is to keep the core clean by, one, getting rid of the modifications inside that core system, and now providing more APIs. And when I mean APIs inside the core that you can use, like in the past, a well-defined body, for example, or a CDS view, where you can really be sure that on the next upgrade, this body still has the same contract and still has the same signature on let's say, importing, exporting parameters, for example. At the same time, we are building more and more APIs that can be used from side-by-side extensions. And this also includes events, so that you can create more and richer use cases on our SAP Cloud Platform or overall the business technology platform. Here's some numbers. With just S/4HANA Cloud 2011, we have now over 400 APIs on the API Business Hub, more than 160 events that you can use out of the box, more than 4,700 CDS views that you can use to actually extend the system in-app, 525 bodies to create custom logic inside S/4HANA Cloud, and so on. And of course, overall, we're looking at all the solutions, taking SuccessFactors, Concur, Ariba into account. We now have over 1,500 APIs on the API Business Hub, and even more in the individual solutions. And we will see more of those also coming up in the API Business Hub. And beyond even those individual solution-specific APIs, we are also working on what we call the one domain model. And we are really committed to make this a reality in 2021 even more. That is actually an aligned domain model across our solutions to make really extensions seamless across all our solutions out of the box, because there's no mapping, for example, necessary between solutions. And what this really means with respect to semantics, you consume one business partner, you consume one workforce person, one cost center, and every SAP solutions understands this concept, this notion of this respective business object out of the box. I kindly refer you to the session on the SAP graph to learn more on extensibility on the one domain model. Let's look at some use cases where you would actually use in-app and side-by-side. In-app is typically used if you really want to change something inside a domain solution like SAP S/4HANA. If you want to, for example, adapt the user interface of the business partner application or of your supplier invoice application, you will do this, of course, inside SAP S/4HANA. Or if you want to create a field, do it in SuccessFactors. Side-by-side, you would rather use for broader use cases, like for B2C scenarios, like H&M is doing, a large fashion retailer that empowers customers to request GDPR data at any time. Or to create business apps for employees for mobile scenarios that need to be accessible at any time from the web, like Danone does with their CapEx approval process applications that vastly improved their CapEx approval processes, including a view on their environmental goals. So these are some of the patterns. And of course, further, there are also technical considerations when you would use in-app and side-by-side. So in-app you would rather use, for example, when it's an extension, a validation logic that needs to happen very close to where actually the transaction is happening. Or when heavy data exchange is required, think of the pricing engine, think of the Dunning run, and you want to extend something, bring specific logic into those pieces, or the MRP run. If you're on the other side, look for the capabilities on the cloud platform and the business technology platform, this would be rather used if you want to have more requirements with respect to cloud qualities, availability, scalability. You need to quickly scale up when there's demand and scale it down if the demand disappears. When you want to integrate with other systems and together with the data from the SAP systems, you would do this, of course, side by side on the SAP Cloud Platform using an extension. And this extension creation in-app as well as side-by-side is supported by a plethora of tools, ranging from so-called low-code, no-code tools, where actually developers with little to even no development skills can still change the system and extend and modify the system with the new extensibility mechanisms, build workflows, adapt the UI, model a domain. The business application development tools go a step further, where you can create richer, more thorough, more comprehensive business applications with the Cloud Application Programming Model, for example, SAP Fiori Elements, the Business Application Studio, or the ABAP RESTful Application Programming Model. And then finally, if you really want to go down into all the details, you can do this and just create cloud native applications with your favorite programming language, with your favorite open source frameworks, facilitated again with convenience libraries for integration and extensibility provided by SAP, like the SAP Cloud SDK, running your code in a Kubernetes cluster, for example. Now, let me show you how we actually do this in 3 demos. For the first use case, what we want to do is actually to build a small platform. Imagine I'm a big SAP customer in the utilities sector, wants to deliver smart home innovations to their B2C customers as part of their business as electricity provider. And they decide to distribute smart home devices, smart meters, solar panels, and the likes, over a large reseller network using different channels and reseller partners. Well, let's see how this can be implemented with SAP technology. Now I actually want to show you how you can leverage the low-code, no-code capabilities of S/4HANA to provide an in-app extensibility. What I want to do for my little reseller network application is to extend the business partner model with the status of the reseller. So I go actually to the application to manage business partner master data. And as you can see here, typical thing, we can look at all our different customers, for example, or our partners. So I take this specific business partner, and here, now I actually want to create a new field and show you some of the UI adaptation capabilities. So we go here into the menu, click Adapt UI, and then the application changes. And now I'm very flexibly can change that UI, change the fields and so on. So for example, here now I would like to add a new field like the reseller status, which unfortunately is not existent. So let's create one and use simply here the plus button to create a new field. So now I'm actually in the custom fields and logic application, and I can create now a new custom field on top of the business partner API, and I call this the reseller level. And this should be actually a code list, a well-known code list with actually 3 values for gold, for silver, silver first, gold, and platinum. And then I'm actually already done. I can now create and publish this new field, which automatically will now extend in an upgrade safe way the business partner model. Now let's go actually back into our business partner application so that we can see how we can actually use now this new extension field on top of our business partner API. Again, I can go back simply in UI adaptation mode to the business partner application, say add field. Now, of course, the reseller level, including description, appears on the UI. I can simply add it with the click of a button and see the reseller level being here. Now and I can move it around and put it wherever my business users need it to be. And I can just save it. And now actually every normal employee who is using this and maintains business partner master data can now actually go into, when editing the business partner, can now actually select the reseller level as I have extended it from the system. I can save this, and now the Apex Corp actually is of reseller level gold. Now this concludes actually the low-code, no-code tooling that you can use outside SAP S/4HANA to extend a business object of an SAP system. Now our utilities company actually wants to distribute the smart home devices to the resellers at their individual conditions. A cloud application needs to now be built for the resellers where the individual reseller conditions are maintained by the back office, but also depending on the reseller level, we just add it as a custom field. One individual condition is the inventory of smart devices that are made available to the given reseller. In this demo, we create a reseller-facing inventory gateway API to deliver inventory information to every reseller. As our customer is expecting high demand for the smart home devices, the new API should be implemented in a cloud-native scalable manner because the workloads can vary over days and over weeks. Luckily, SAP Cloud Platform now offers a managed Kyma environment, the SAP Cloud Platform Kyma Runtime, for your Kubernetes and serverless extension workloads. This offers a managed Kubernetes cluster with Service Mesh, Knative, and many additional enterprise capabilities. And it also includes a function as a service option. So it's basically the whole logic can be coded and just a few functions that are highly scalable, extending the system. So this is how actually here in VS Code, how this gateway is implemented. There is basically a main function that is the entry point to the service. In a first step, the retailer ID is determined actually from our incoming request. And once we have determined the reseller, we get actually all the resellable products that this reseller is allowed to see, and then retrieve, based on the resellable products, retrieve the material stock from the S/4HANA system. And this is coded in this specific function, and it's actually called and calls an API of the S/4HANA system. Now we have already deployed this in the background under this URL, and what I can now actually do is just to see what this does. And as I can see, a couple of SKUs and also their available amount is coming back. Now, unfortunately, our customer has told us this is insufficient because the unit of measure is actually missing and is not provided because it's just an arbitrary amount. Can be apples, could be peaches. So what we actually want to do is now enhance the request very easily towards the SAP S/4HANA system and towards the Material Stock API. And this is very simple. Using the SAP Cloud SDK inside such a Kuma function, we can just exploratively use the API inside our coding environment and actually select the material base unit and expand this. So let me just quickly actually deploy this function again to the Kuma runtime on the SAP Cloud Platform. And once it is deployed, which is actually very quick and simple, we can already use now the functionality out of the box in a highly scalable fashion. So if we go now actually back into our Postman, what we can now see when we hit the send button again, that now actually the unit of measure, the base unit, whether it's pieces or whether it's meters, is actually now retrieved from the backend system. This actually concludes our little scenario for our utilities company with an in-app extension presented in SAP S/4HANA extending the business partner model and using actually this information together with the Material Stock API to implement a very highly scalable cloud API gateway for our reseller network. And this is very simple with the tools provided, like the in-app extension capabilities, low-code, no-code, and things like the Kuma runtime or the SAP Cloud SDK that make the creation of such extensions very, very simple. Now let's look at an example, an industry extension for the utility sector built by SAP using the tools for business application development, using exactly the same extensibility options and tools that are also available to you as customers or as partners. Now, what we want to create is a utility measurement concept model maintenance application that is used by an energy network operator to model which energy consumption and production flows and corresponding metering concepts their customers use, along with the concrete master data of the individual installation. This data is actually used along the utilities processes for planning the installation as a blueprint for managing the corresponding master data and using it for metering and billing. Now, the small business application we want to create is actually empowered by SAP HANA Cloud, the cloud application programming model, to model the core domain in a model-driven approach together with the UI annotations, and then leveraging Fiori elements in a domain in a model-driven fashion, and then actually using SAP UI 5 breakouts to implement on top of the model-driven approach some very delighting customer-facing aspects. So let's look first of all on how the application would look like later on. So with Fiori elements, we would get a basically a core domain, which is a measurement concept class. We can actually get out of the box a Fiori application inside a Launchpad that provides all the out of the box features you would expect from Fiori. And here, for example, a measurement concept class for an energy feed that is used to feed energy to a grid. Let's see how this is actually done. We first of all go to our core domain, which is the measurement concept class. You can see here actually how this is modeled with an ID, a name, a class type, and so on and so forth. And now actually what is brand new inside VS Code, which I'm using locally here, I even get code completion thanks to new plugins we're actually also delivering for Visual Studio Code here. By the way, the same thing can be also, if you rather favor using the Business Application Studio, the same capabilities can be used out of the Business Application Studio. And here we even provide a very brand new CDS graphical editor where you can take a look and change your core domain model with a visual representation. And the great aspect of the new plugins and the new Business Application Studio is that all those plugins are also available for local development in VS Code. So you can actually really decide what you want to use. Now, let's also look how we actually model the UI. So here, based on the core domain model, we then actually provided how the view should look like. There's the line item list, there's the header info that we all retrieve from our core domain model. But of course, we don't only want to show line items and lists and so on, but something more delightful. What we actually want to do is now to these measurements concept typically are viewed in a graphical graph representation so that you can really see which measurement concepts classes are connected with each other and are populating their data one after another. And we have actually created, we call this here a physical location, the location structure that we have actually modeled as a UI5 fragment. And here with a very comprehensive graph representation with the layouting algorithm representing the various nodes and lines in that graph. And what I can now actually also do is now, again, using plugins for VS Code that are delivered by SAP, can now actually embed this specific fragment for the physical location section into my model-driven Fiori application as a breakout. And the great thing about it is I can immediately update this locally. So when I hit refresh, this fragment is here shown inside the application out of the box, thanks to the new local development capabilities we provide in order to help you with development efficiency. So here you can see now all the various measurement locations and concepts in a very nice graphical representation that actually fulfills the customer requirements, because this is the way how they look at this typically. Very clearly, this shows just a few examples on how SAP invests to make lifecycle management of extensions easier. We also now provide a comprehensive continuous integration and delivery service that is generally available since Q3. We have more capabilities to further facilitate the development efficiency for you as a developer, and we are clearly committed also on our joint journey for 2021 that we provide more extension capabilities. So this actually concludes our demos, and it just showed you a glimpse of SAP's portfolio of tools, methods, and technologies that make your life as developer simpler to write extensions and to actually remember our challenge, the challenge in 2021, getting rid of custom code and modifications as we did it in the past in order to facilitate seamless upgrades. And those tools actually shall help you to write those extensions way faster in an upgrade safe manner. But there's so much more that is happening. Our promise is clear. We are committing to make the development productivity even higher in the years to come. And 2021 will be a key year for us, where we will heavily invest into further building out those capabilities, as I just gave you an overview on. In low code, no code, in the business application development, looking at events, DevOps tooling, RESTful ABAP, the Kuma runtime, managed Kubernetes clusters, with your own code. And most importantly also, as I said originally, more APIs. So watch out for more innovations that are happening by SAP. And start today. There is no reason not to start today using the modern in-app and side-by-side extensions that shall replace the more traditional approaches with the tools just outlined to help you actually with this migration path. You can start today, and we gave you all the reasons why you actually should do this to innovate more, to serve your end users and your customers more, with actually the greatest and latest innovations by SAP. There's so much more innovation and so much more content on TechEd that actually goes into the details. And I just outlined a few of them. So I strongly encourage you to dive deeper and learn more about all the great tools that are available for next year and our common challenge. And of course, continue your learning experience at SAP TechEd here in 2020. And honestly, with this, I'd like to conclude. I wish you a great TechEd. I wish you then also a great holiday season while we are approaching the end of the year. And of course, finally, I wish all of you to stay healthy and safe in those unprecedented times so that we can together rock 2021 together. Thank you.